The blood-red sunset cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Red Cloud, Nebraska Territory. 1867. As Mercy Jameson stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but a carpet-bag and a determination that frightened even herself. She tucked a wayward strand of chestnut hair behind her ear and straightened her travel-worn blue dress, eyes scanning the frontier town that would either be her salvation or her ruin. "You must be the new schoolteacher," said a deep voice behind her. Mercy turned to find herself staring up at a man whose face told stories of sun and hardship. His cowboy hat cast a shadow over piercing blue eyes, but it couldn't hide the wariness in them. "Yes, I am Miss Jameson," she replied, extending her gloved hand. "And you are?" "Preston Xavier," he answered, hesitating before taking her hand. His calloused palm briefly enveloped hers before quickly releasing it. "Mayor asked me to meet you, show you to your lodgings." He reached for her carpetbag, but she maintained her grip. "I can manage, thank you," she said firmly. A hint of amusement flickered across his weathered face. "Suit yourself, Miss Jameson." As they walked, Mercy felt the weight of stares from the townsfolk. Women whispered behind hands while men paused their conversations to watch her pass. "They're curious about you," Preston explained. "Not often we get new folks in Red Cloud, especially a woman traveling alone." "I'm hardly the first woman to seek independence," Mercy replied, her chin lifting slightly. Preston stopped walking. "This isn't Boston or New York, Miss Jameson. Out here, a woman alone gets herself talked about." Mercy met his gaze unflinchingly. "Then let them talk about Mercy." Something in Preston's expression shifted, respect, perhaps, or concern. "Your funeral," he muttered, resuming their walk. "Though I reckon you'll find teaching 20 prairie children harder than whatever you're running from." "I'm not running from anything, Mr. Xavier," Mercy said, though the lie tasted bitter on her tongue. "I'm running towards something." Preston gave her a sidelong glance. "Aren't we all?" He led her to a modest white clapboard house at the edge of town. "Mrs. Holloway's boarding house. She'll take good care of you. School's just down that way," he pointed. "Starts Monday morning." "Thank you for your assistance," Mercy said formally. Preston tipped his hat. "Word of advice, Miss Jameson. Red Cloud might look peaceful, but appearances can be deceiving. Watch yourself." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, his spurs jingling with each step. Mercy watched him go, wondering what kind of man he was and what kind of town she'd found herself in. Mrs. Holloway was a plump, pleasant woman who showed Mercy to a small but clean room on the second floor. "It's not much," the landlady apologized, "but it's yours for as long as you need it." "It's perfect," Mercy assured her, setting down her bag. After the cramped stagecoach, even this modest space felt luxurious. "Dinner's at 6, Mrs. Holloway said, hesitating at the door. "If you don't mind my asking, what brings a young lady like yourself all the way out here? We haven't had a schoolteacher since Mr. Thompson left last winter." "I saw the advertisement in a Chicago paper," Mercy explained, which was true enough. "I wanted a fresh start, Mrs." Holloway's kind eyes held understanding. "Don't we all, dear? Don't we all?" After unpacking her meager belongings, Mercy stood at the window, watching as the last light faded from the sky. Red Cloud looked peaceful in the twilight, nothing like the chaos she'd left behind. Perhaps here, finally, she could build something for herself, something that couldn't be taken away. She thought of Preston Xavier's warning and squared her shoulders. Let them talk. She'd survived worse than gossip. On Monday morning, Mercy arrived at the schoolhouse an hour early, nerves fluttering in her stomach. The building was simple, a single room with rows of benches, a pot-bellied stove in the corner, and a chalkboard at the front. She arranged her books on the teacher's desk, wondering what kind of students she would face. She didn't have to wait long. The door creaked open and a young girl with braided blonde hair peeked in. "Are you the new teacher?" she asked shyly. Mercy smiled. "Yes, I'm Miss Jameson." "And who might you be?" "Sarah Miller." The girl stepped inside, followed by a boy who looked to be her younger brother. "This is Thomas." Within minutes, the schoolhouse filled with children ranging from 5 to 16, all watching her with curious eyes. When the last student was seated, Mercy cleared her throat. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Miss Jameson and I'll be your teacher." She picked up a piece of chalk. "Let's start by learning about one another, shall we?" The morning passed in a blur of introductions, assessments, and establishing rules. Mercy was surprised by the wide range of abilities in the classroom. Some students could barely write their names, while others demonstrated impressive knowledge of literature and mathematics. At noon, she dismissed them for lunch, collapsing into her chair with a sigh. Teaching 20 children of different ages and abilities was indeed challenging, but there was something deeply satisfying about it. She was eating an apple when the door opened again. Preston Xavier stood in the entrance, hat in hand, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Mr. Xavier," she acknowledged, setting down her apple. "What brings you to the schoolhouse?" "Just checking how your first day is going," he said, stepping inside but remaining near the door. "These kids can be a handful." "They're bright and eager to learn," Mercy countered. "I find that refreshing." Preston nodded slowly. "Good, that's good." He fidgeted with his hat. "Listen, I wanted to apologize for being abrupt the other day. Wasn't neighborly of me." "Apology accepted," she said, surprised by his directness. He hesitated. "There's a social at the church this Saturday. Whole town will be there. Might help you get acquainted with folks." "Are you inviting me, Mr. Xavier?" A faint flush colored his tanned cheeks. "Just letting you know about it, as a courtesy." "Well, thank you for the courtesy," Mercy said, unable to keep a smile from her lips. He nodded once, put his hat back on, and left as abruptly as he'd arrived. One of the older girls, Emily Parker, returned early from lunch and caught the tail end of their exchange. "Miss Jameson, do you know Mr. Xavier?" "He met me when I arrived," Mercy answered, returning to her desk. Emily lowered her voice. "My ma says he's dangerous. That he used to ride with outlaws before he came here." Mercy raised an eyebrow. "Perhaps your mother shouldn't spread rumors about people, Emily, and perhaps you shouldn't repeat them." "It's not rumors," the girl insisted. "He killed a man in Silver Creek. Everyone knows it." Before Mercy could respond, the other students began filing back in. She pushed the conversation from her mind, but later, walking back to the boarding house, she found herself wondering about Preston Xavier. There was something in his eyes, a wariness, a distance that spoke of a troubled past. That evening at dinner, Mrs. Holloway and the other boarders, an elderly retired doctor and a young bank clerk, peppered Mercy with questions about her first day. "Those Miller children are bright as buttons," Mrs. Holloway declared, passing a bowl of potatoes. "Their father's the blacksmith. Widowed 2 years ago, poor man. The Parker girl can be trouble," the bank clerk, Mr. Thompson, warned. "Takes after her mother, tongue sharper than a new razor." "Speaking of trouble," Dr. Hanson said, lowering his voice, "I saw Xavier stopping by the schoolhouse today." Mrs. Holloway clicked her tongue. "He's got no business around children." "Why not?" Mercy asked, unable to contain her curiosity. The three exchanged glances. It was Dr. Hanson who finally spoke. "Preston Xavier rode into town about 3 years ago, half dead from a gunshot wound. I patched him up, but he wouldn't say who shot him or why." The old doctor cut his meat carefully. "He bought that ranch outside town with cash money, more cash than an honest cowboy usually carries." "That doesn't make him dishonest," Mercy pointed out. "No," Mrs. Holloway agreed, "but the men who came looking for him 6 months later sure seemed to think he was. 3 of them mean as snakes. There was a shooting. All 3 died, Mr. Thompson added. Xavier claimed self-defense and Sheriff Williams couldn't prove otherwise. Since then, he's kept to himself, Dr. Hanson concluded. Works his ranch, sells his cattle, doesn't cause trouble, but folks remember. People need someone to fear, Mercy said quietly. It makes them feel safer somehow. Mrs. Holloway patted her hand. You've a kind heart, dear. Just be careful where you place your trust. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Mercy thought about trust, who deserved it, who betrayed it. Her hand drifted to the locket around her neck, the only thing she'd kept from her old life. Inside was a small photograph, a reminder of why she could never go back. She'd come to Red Cloud for anonymity, not to get entangled in someone else's troubled past. Yet something about Preston Xavier's story resonated with her. Perhaps they were more alike than either would care to admit. The week passed in a flurry of lessons, gradually earning the respect of her students. By Friday, Mercy felt she was beginning to understand the rhythms of the town, which families feuded, which businesses thrived, which children needed extra attention. After dismissing her class, she stayed late to prepare Monday's lessons. The sun was setting when she finally locked the schoolhouse door. As she turned to leave, she found Preston leaning against a hitching post, his horse tethered nearby. "Mr. Xavier," she said, startled. "You have a habit of appearing unexpectedly." "Been that way most of my life," he replied with a ghost of a smile. "Thought you might want an escort back to town. Getting dark." "I'm perfectly capable of walking yourself," he finished. "I don't doubt it. But there's been word of wolves coming down from the hills lately." Mercy hesitated. The path back to town did cut through a wooded area. "Very well. Thank you." They walked in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the soft footfalls of Preston's horse trailing behind them. "How are you finding Red Cloud?" he finally asked. "It's different from what I'm accustomed to," she admitted. "But I like the children. They're honest in a way adults rarely are." Preston nodded. "Kids haven't learned to hide yet. Unlike the rest of us." His eyes flickered to her face. "Some have more to hide than others, Miss Jameson." The directness of his gaze unsettled her. "I've heard stories about you. I imagine you have." His voice remained even. "Most of them probably true." "Did you kill those men?" Preston stopped walking. For a long moment he just looked at her, his expression unreadable in the fading light. "Yes," he finally said. "They came to kill me. I got to them first." Mercy absorbed this. "Why did they want you dead?" "That's a longer story than our walk allows for." He gestured for them to continue. "What about you, Miss Jameson? What brings a clearly educated woman to a place like Red Cloud?" "Perhaps I wanted adventure," she suggested lightly. Preston laughed, a sound that seemed to surprise even him. "No one comes to Nebraska Territory for adventure. They come because they're running from something or because they've got nowhere else to go." His voice softened. "Which is it for you?" The question hung between them. Mercy knew she should fabricate something, maintain the careful distance she'd established with everyone in town. But something about the gathering darkness, about walking beside this dangerous, perceptive man, loosened her guard. "Both," she admitted. "I needed to disappear." He nodded, accepting this without pressing further. "You planning on going to that social tomorrow?" The abrupt change of subject caught her off guard. "I hadn't decided." "You should. Folks are curious about you. Better to let them satisfy that curiosity in the open than have them making up stories." "Is that what happened with you? People made up stories?" "No," Preston said grimly. "In my case, the truth was bad enough." They had reached the edge of town. Light spilled from the windows of the saloon, and a few people moved along the boardwalk, casting curious glances their way. "Thank you for walking me back," Mercy said formally. Preston tipped his hat. "Miss Jameson." He gathered his horse's reins. "About that social if you decide to go, save me a dance." Before she could respond, he swung into the saddle and rode off, leaving Mercy staring after him, wondering what kind of dance she was getting herself into. Saturday evening arrived clear and mild. Mercy dressed with care in her best gown, a sage green silk with modest lace trim. She pinned her hair up, allowing a few curls to frame her face, and fastened her mother's pearl earrings in place. Mrs. Holloway knocked on her door. "My, don't you look lovely, ready to face the lion's den?" Mercy laughed nervously. "Is that what it will be?" "Oh, they'll be gentle enough, just curious." The landlady offered her arm. "Shall we?" The church was transformed with lanterns and wildflowers. Tables laden with food lined one wall, while a small group of musicians tuned their instruments in the corner. Nearly everyone in town seemed to be present, conversations pausing as Mercy entered. Reverend Miller, father to two of her students, approached with a warm smile. "Miss Jameson, so pleased you could join us." Soon, Mercy found herself surrounded by parents eager to discuss their children's progress. The initial awkwardness dissolved as she shared stories from the classroom, praising each child's unique qualities. She was helping herself to punch when Mrs. Parker, Emily's mother, approached. The woman's pinched expression matched her daughter's description. "Miss Jameson," she said, her voice carrying just a bit too loudly, "I understand you've been seen in Preston Xavier's company." Nearby conversations quieted. "Mr. Xavier kindly escorted me home from the schoolhouse yesterday evening," Mercy replied evenly. "It was getting dark." Mrs. Parker's eyebrows rose. "How gallant of him! I wouldn't have expected such concern from a man with his reputation." "And what reputation is that exactly?" Mercy asked, maintaining her composure. "Why, everyone knows he's killed at least 3 men," Mrs. Parker said, eyes gleaming with the pleasure of gossip. "Some say more. Hardly suitable company for our children's teacher." Mercy set down her punch. "Mrs. Parker, in my experience, those who speak most confidently about others' misdeeds are often hiding their own." A shocked silence followed her words. "Well, I never," Mrs. Parker sputtered. "Perhaps you should," Mercy suggested calmly. "It might broaden your perspective." She excused herself, heart pounding, and stepped outside for air. The night was cool, stars brilliant overhead. She heard the door open behind her. "That was quite a performance," said Preston's voice. She turned to find him leaning against the church wall, dressed in a clean white shirt and dark vest. Without his usual trail dust, he looked almost handsome. "You heard." Everyone heard. A smile played at his lips. "Mrs. Parker's not used to being challenged. She'll be plotting your downfall by morning." "She wouldn't be the first," Mercy sighed. Inside, the music started, a lively fiddle tune that spilled through the open windows. Preston straightened, extending his hand. "I believe you owe me a dance, Miss Jameson. After what just happened, dancing with you will only give them more to talk about." "Then let them talk." He echoed her words from their first meeting. Mercy studied him for a moment before placing her hand in his. "Very well, Mr. Xavier. One dance." They re-entered the church together. Conversations faltered as Preston led her to the cleared space where couples were gathering. He placed one hand respectfully at her waist, holding her other hand gently. "I should warn you," he murmured. "I'm not much of a dancer." "Then we'll be poorly matched," she replied, "as I'm quite accomplished." For the first time, she saw genuine amusement light his eyes. "Modesty becomes you, Miss Jameson." They moved into the dance, their steps gradually finding harmony. Preston was more graceful than he'd claimed, guiding her with surprising confidence. "Where did a cowboy learn to dance?" she asked. "Wasn't always a cowboy," he replied. "Once upon a time I was a respectable citizen." "What changed?" His expression clouded. War has a way of unmaking men, Miss Jameson. The war between the states, Preston nodded. Saw things no man should see, did things no man should do, came back different. His eyes met hers. You understand that, I think. Mercy felt exposed, as if he could somehow see past her carefully constructed facade to the truth beneath. We've all lost something to violence, she said softly, some more than others. His hand tightened slightly at her waist. Those men I killed, they deserved worse than they got. Is that why you came to Red Cloud? To escape your past? Partly, he admitted. Mostly I just wanted somewhere quiet to live out whatever years I have left. You're hardly old, Mr. Xavier. A sad smile touched his lips. Age isn't measured just in years. The music ended and they stepped apart, the weight of stares pressed upon them from all sides. Thank you for the dance, Mercy said formally. Preston bowed slightly. The pleasure was mine. He lowered his voice. Though I think we've provided enough fodder for the gossips, I should go. Must you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Something in his expression softened. Walk with me to the churchyard, he suggested. Outside, the night had grown cooler. Mercy shivered slightly, and Preston immediately removed his coat, draping it over her shoulders. Thank you, she murmured, pulling it closer. It smelled of leather and pine. They walked to a bench beneath an old oak tree, sitting in companionable silence for a moment. You never did tell me what you're running from, Preston said eventually. Mercy toyed with her locket. No, I didn't. Fair enough. He leaned back, looking up at the stars. We all have secrets. Mine could destroy everything I've built here, she admitted. Preston turned to her, his expression serious. Are you in danger, Miss Jameson? The concern in his voice warmed something inside her. Not immediately. But if certain people discovered where I am, anyone comes looking to hurt you, they'll have to go through me first. The fierceness of his declaration startled her. You barely know me. I know enough. His eyes held hers steadily. I know you're kind to children who others have given up on. I know you stood up to the biggest gossip in town without flinching, and I know there's a sadness in you that matches my own. Mercy's throat tightened with emotion. Mr. Xavier, Preston, he corrected gently. After defying convention by dancing with the town pariah, I think you've earned the right to use my given name. Preston, she repeated, liking how it felt. Then you must call me Mercy. Mercy, he said, the name a caress on his lips. It suits you. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stood, offering his hand to help her up. I should get back to my ranch, he said, and you should return to the social before your absence causes even more speculation. Reluctantly, Mercy shrugged off his coat, returning it to him. Thank you for the dance and the conversation. Both were overdue, he replied with a small smile. As she watched him walk away, Mercy realized something had shifted between them and within her. For the first time since arriving in Red Cloud, she felt less alone. The following weeks brought changes to Mercy's routine. She immersed herself in teaching, finding joy in her students' progress. The townspeople gradually accepted her presence, though Mrs. Parker maintained a frosty distance. Preston began appearing at the schoolhouse regularly, first with the excuse of delivering firewood, then bringing books he thought the children might enjoy, and finally admitting he simply wanted to see her. Their friendship grew in these brief encounters, though Mercy was careful to maintain propriety, always meeting him in the public setting of the schoolhouse. One Friday, in late October, as falling leaves danced around the schoolyard, Preston arrived as the children were being dismissed. Miss Jameson, he greeted her formally in front of her students, though his eyes held warmth. I wondered if you might permit me to show you something on my ranch tomorrow. It's a fair ride, but I think you'd find it worthwhile. Whispers erupted among the older students. Mercy felt heat rise to her cheeks. That would be inappropriate, Mr. Xavier. Mrs. Holloway is welcome to accompany us as chaperone, he added, clearly having anticipated her objection. Mercy hesitated. What is it you wish to show me? That would spoil the surprise. He smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. I promise it's nothing untoward. Very well, she agreed, pretending not to notice the excited glances her students exchanged. If Mrs. Holloway is willing. The next morning dawned crisp and clear. Mrs. Holloway, bundled against the autumn chill, seemed delighted by the outing. It's been years since I've been to the Xavier Ranch, she confided as they waited. Not since old Mr. Hargrove owned it. Such a lovely property. Preston arrived with a wagon, helping both women aboard with practiced ease. As they left town, Mercy was acutely aware of curtains twitching in windows they passed. People will talk, she murmured. Let them, Preston replied, his eyes on the road ahead. If they're going to gossip anyway, might as well give them something worth talking about. The road to his ranch wound through rolling hills painted in autumn colors. After about an hour they crested a rise, and Mercy caught her breath. Below them stretched a picturesque valley. A neat white farmhouse and red barn stood near a creek that wound through pastures dotted with cattle. Beyond, pine forests climbed the distant hills. It's beautiful, Mercy said sincerely. Pride warmed Preston's face. 3 years of hard work. When I bought it, the place was falling apart. He guided the wagon down to the farmhouse, where a middle-aged woman stood waiting. Mrs. Rodriguez, Preston introduced her. She helps me keep the place from falling back into ruin, makes sure I eat something besides beans and coffee. Mrs. Rodriguez greeted them warmly, ushering Mrs. Holloway inside with promises of freshly baked bread while Preston led Mercy toward the barn. Is this what you wanted to show me? Mercy asked, gesturing at the well-maintained ranch. No, Preston smiled. This is. He opened the barn door to reveal a magnificent chestnut mare with a white star on her forehead. Beside her stood a wobbly-legged foal, barely a week old. Oh, Mercy breathed, stepping closer. She's lovely. Preston corrected. Born last Sunday, first foal from my new breeding program. He watched as Mercy cautiously approached, extending her hand for the foal to sniff. You're not afraid of horses? I grew up riding, she admitted, stroking the foal's velvety nose. My father raised thoroughbreds in Kentucky. Preston leaned against the stall door. Kentucky. That's a long way from here. Mercy realized she'd revealed more than intended. Yes, she said simply. It is. They spent the next hour touring the ranch. Preston showed her the improvements he'd made, the irrigation system for his kitchen garden, the new fencing for the cattle pastures, the smokehouse where haunches of venison hung curing. You've built something remarkable here, Mercy said as they walked back toward the house. Why do you live in such solitude? You could have workers, hands to help you. Preston was quiet for a moment. After the war, I couldn't stand being around people. Too much noise, too many memories. He looked across his land. Out here, I can breathe, can think clearly. And the men who came after you, the ones you killed, his jaw tightened. That's the other reason. Less chance of innocent people getting caught in the crossfire. Who were they? Preston stopped walking. Does it matter? It might, Mercy said gently, if I'm to understand you. He studied her face as if weighing how much to reveal. I rode with a gang for a while after the war, he finally said. Not by choice at first, was wounded, desperate. They took me in and I did things I'm not proud of. Robberies, he nodded. Stagecoaches, mostly. No one got hurt under my watch. But the leader, man named Blackwood, he started enjoying the violence too much. Last job I was part of, he shot a passenger who didn't hand over his wallet fast enough. Mercy's hand went involuntarily to her locket. I left that night. Preston continued. Took my share of the money and disappeared. Blackwood didn't take kindly to deserters, sent men after me. Those 3 weren't the first, just the last. You think there might be more? Preston shook his head. Blackwood was arrested last year, hanged in Denver. I thought I was finally free. His eyes met hers. Until you showed up in Red Cloud, looking over your shoulder the way I used to. Mercy felt exposed. I'm not running from outlaws. No, Preston agreed, but you're running from something just as dangerous. Before she could respond, Mrs. Holloway emerged from the house, calling them in for lunch. The moment for confessions passed. The meal was pleasant, with Mrs. Rodriguez's cooking drawing praise from both women. Afterward, Mrs. Holloway announced her intention to rest a while before the journey back, leaving Mercy and Preston alone on the porch. Thank you for today, Mercy said, watching the wind ripple through the tall grass. It's been peaceful, Preston nodded. That's what I found here, peace. He hesitated. It could be yours too. Mercy looked at him sharply. What do you mean? I mean there's room in this valley for more than just me and my ghosts. His voice was rough with emotion. I know it's too soon. We've only known each other a few weeks. But I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you stepped off that stagecoach. Mercy's heart pounded in her chest. Preston, you don't need to say anything now, he hurried on. Just think about it, about what kind of life you want. I can't, she whispered. There are things you don't know about me. Then tell me, he urged, moving closer. Whatever it is, we can face it together. The temptation to confess everything was overwhelming, but fear held her back, fear of rejection, fear of danger, fear of losing the fragile new life she'd built. I need time, she finally said. Preston nodded, disappointment and understanding mingling in his expression. Time I can give you. They rode back to town in companionable silence, the unspoken words between them somehow drawing them closer rather than pushing them apart. At the boarding house, Preston helped them down from the wagon. Thank you for a lovely day, Mr. Xavier, Mrs. Holloway said meaningfully, disappearing inside to give them a moment alone. Will I see you tomorrow? Preston asked softly. Mercy nodded. I often walk by the creek after church. His smile was answer enough. That night, Mercy couldn't sleep. Preston's words echoed in her mind. It could be yours too. The vision of a life at his side in that peaceful valley was so tempting it hurt, but the past loomed like a shadow, threatening everything. She took out her locket, opening it to gaze at the small photograph inside a baby girl with her eyes. The daughter she'd been forced to give up, the daughter whose wealthy father had threatened to destroy Mercy if she ever tried to claim her child. Charles Henderson had been charming, powerful, and ultimately ruthless. When Mercy, a naive governess in his household, had discovered she was carrying his child, he'd shipped her off to a distant relative until the birth. Afterward, he'd given her a choice: leave and never return, or face charges of theft that would see her imprisoned. She'd left, her heart broken, with only this locket containing a secretly taken photograph to remember her daughter by. For 3 years, she'd moved from town to town, taking teaching positions, always afraid Henderson would find her. What would Preston think if he knew? Would he still look at her with that warmth in his eyes? Or would he see what others would, a fallen woman, unworthy of respect? Sunday dawned gloomy, with heavy clouds threatening rain. Mercy attended church services, painfully aware of Preston sitting several rows behind her. Mrs. Parker's disapproving glances burned into the back of her neck, but Mercy kept her focus on Reverend Miller's sermon about forgiveness and second chances. Afterward, despite the threatening weather, she walked to the creek as promised. Preston was already there, skipping stones across the water. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said, turning at her approach. Nor was I, she admitted. They walked along the bank, the only sounds the rushing water and distant thunder. Finally, Mercy stopped. "If I tell you everything," she said quietly, "you must promise not to interrupt until I'm finished." Preston's expression grew serious. "I promise." So she told him about being orphaned at 16, about working as a governess in the Henderson household, about Charles Henderson's seduction and betrayal, about her daughter's birth, and the impossible choice she'd been forced to make. "I named her Grace," Mercy said, tears streaming down her face. "I held her for 1 hour before they took her away. She had my eyes and his chin." She touched the locket at her throat. "This is all I have of her." Throughout her story, Preston remained silent as promised, though she saw anger, shock, and compassion cross his face. "Henderson threatened to have me arrested if I ever tried to see her again," Mercy concluded. "Said no court would believe a penniless governess over a respected businessman." And he was right. "Where is he now?" Preston asked, his voice tight with controlled rage. "Chicago. He's a railroad executive, wealthy and influential." Mercy wiped her tears. "I came west because I heard he was expanding his business interests eastward. I was afraid he might recognize me." "And your daughter, being raised as his niece, the child of his deceased sister." Bitter pain laced her words. "She'll want for nothing except the truth." The first drops of rain began to fall, but neither moved to seek shelter. "Now you know," Mercy said, unable to meet his eyes. "I'm not the respectable schoolteacher everyone thinks I am." Preston stepped closer, gently tilting her face up to his. "What I know is that you survived something that would have broken most people. You protected your daughter the only way you could. And you've built a new life with grace and dignity. The town would run me out if they knew." "Then they never need to know," he said firmly. "Your past is yours alone." The rain fell harder now, soaking through their clothes, but Mercy barely noticed. "And you, does it change how you see me?" In answer, Preston cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly at first, then with increasing urgency as she responded. Mercy clung to him, years of loneliness and fear dissolving in the warmth of his embrace. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Preston rested his forehead against hers. "I think I've been waiting for you my whole life, Mercy Jameson. Even with all my complications," she whispered. "Especially with them," he replied, a smile in his voice. "They're what make you who you are." Thunder crashed directly overhead, making them both jump. Preston laughed, taking her hand. "Come on, we need to get out of this storm." They ran toward town, soaked and laughing like children. At the edge of Main Street, Preston pulled her under the shelter of a shop awning. "Meet me tomorrow after school," he said, brushing wet hair from her face. "I have something to ask you properly." Mercy nodded, her heart too full for words. He kissed her once more, quickly. Before they parted ways, he to his horse hitched outside the general store. She to the boarding house where Mrs. Holloway would surely have questions about her bedraggled state. That night, Mercy dreamed of Grace not as the infant she'd lost, but as a little girl running through the meadows of Preston's ranch. Her laughter carried on the wind. Monday brought clear skies and excited students who had witnessed their teacher's rain-soaked embrace with the mysterious rancher. Mercy deflected their questions with good humor, though she couldn't help blushing when Emily Parker pointedly asked if Mr. Xavier was a good kisser. "That's quite enough, Miss Parker," Mercy said firmly, though the girl's impish grin suggested her blush had provided answer enough. The day crawled by, each minute stretching endlessly as Mercy anticipated seeing Preston again. When the final bell rang, she tidied the classroom with unusual haste, her hands trembling slightly with anticipation. She was locking the schoolhouse door when a voice not Preston's called her name. "Miss Jameson." Mercy turned to find Sheriff Williams approaching, his expression grave. "Sheriff," she acknowledged, unease creeping through her. "How can I help you?" "Got a telegram today," he said, producing a yellow paper from his pocket. "From Chicago." He paused, studying her face. "Man named Henderson is looking for you. Says you stole something valuable from him." Mercy's blood ran cold. "That's not true." The sheriff's weathered face revealed nothing. "Didn't say it was, just passing along the message." He handed her the telegram. "Thought you should know someone's asking questions." Her hands shook as she read the terse message. "Seeking information on Catherine Jameson stop, believed to be working as teacher stop, wanted for theft stop reward offered stop Charles Henderson Chicago stop." "He found me," she whispered. "Seems that way," the sheriff agreed. "Want to tell me what this is about?" Mercy folded the telegram carefully. "It's complicated, Sheriff. Usually is." He adjusted his hat. "I haven't sent a reply yet. Figured I'd talk to you first." Hope flickered dimly. "You haven't confirmed I'm here." "No, madam, but if this fella's telling the truth, I'm duty-bound to report it." "He's lying," Mercy said, her voice stronger now. "I stole nothing from him. In fact, he stole something precious from me." The sheriff's eyebrows rose. "That's so." Before she could explain further, Preston rode up, his expression darkening when he saw the sheriff. "Everything all right?" he asked, dismounting. Sheriff Williams nodded to him. "Xavier, just having a chat with Miss Jameson about a telegram from Chicago." Preston's eyes met Mercy's, understanding dawning immediately. "Henderson," he said flatly. "You know about this?" the sheriff asked, surprise evident in his voice. "I do," Preston confirmed. "And I can vouch that Miss Jameson is no thief." "The man sending that telegram, however, is something far worse." Sheriff Williams looked between them thoughtfully. "Sounds like you two need to have a conversation. I'll hold off replying for 24 hours." His stern gaze fixed on Mercy. "But after that, I need the truth, one way or another." After the sheriff walked away, Preston took Mercy's trembling hands in his. "We need to talk somewhere private." They rode to the same creek where they'd stood in the rain the day before, though it seemed a lifetime ago now. Preston tethered his horse to a tree, then joined Mercy on a fallen log. "He found me," she said numbly, "after all this time." "He hasn't found you yet," Preston corrected. "He's fishing, sending telegrams to towns across the West. But he will." Despair crept into her voice. "And when he does, he'll destroy everything I've built here." Preston was quiet for a moment. "Unless we stop him." "How? He's wealthy, powerful, so was Blackwood," Preston interrupted, "and he ended up at the end of a rope." Mercy stared at him. "What are you suggesting?" "Nothing so drastic," he assured her. "But I learned something during my outlaw days. Every powerful man has secrets he'd do anything to protect." "Henderson certainly does," Mercy agreed. "But how does that help us?" Preston took her hands again. "What if we could prove that Grace is your daughter, that he lied about her parentage?" "After 5 years. How? I have a friend in Denver used to be a Pinkerton detective before the war. If anyone can find evidence, it's him." Preston's eyes held determination. "Henderson built his lie on the assumption you'd never fight back. What if you did?" "He'd ruin me," Mercy whispered. "Not if we ruined him first." Preston's voice was steel. "Not if we had proof he fathered a child with a woman in his employ, then essentially kidnapped that child." Hope and fear warred within her. "Even if we could prove it, I'd still be an unwed mother. The town would never accept me as their children's teacher." Preston took a deep breath. "They would if you were married." Mercy's heart stopped. "Preston, this isn't how I planned to ask," he said ruefully, sliding from the log to one knee before her. "I had a whole speech prepared about how you brought light back into my life. But circumstances being what they are," he reached into his pocket, producing a simple gold ring. "Mercy Jameson, will you marry me? Not just to face Henderson, but because I love you, complications and all." Tears welled in Mercy's eyes. "You love me more than I thought possible," he confessed. "I think I started falling for you the moment you told me to let them talk about Mercy." She laughed through her tears. "That was rather bold of me." "It was perfect," he corrected. "You were perfect. And whether we get your daughter back or not, I want to build a life with you if you'll have me." Mercy cupped his face in her hands. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." The kiss that followed sealed more than just a proposal. It sealed a partnership, a promise to face whatever came together. They rode back to town hand in hand, a plan forming between them. First, they would see Reverend Miller about arranging a swift ceremony. Then, Preston would telegraph his detective friend in Denver. Meanwhile, Mercy would tell Sheriff Williams enough of the truth to keep him from responding to Henderson's telegram. "What if it doesn't work?" Mercy asked as they approached town. "What if we can't prove anything?" Preston squeezed her hand. "Then we'll leave, start fresh somewhere else, somewhere he can't find us. You'd give up your ranch, everything you've built. Land is just land," he said simply. "You're what matters now." News of their engagement spread through Red Cloud like wildfire. Mrs. Holloway wept with joy, declaring she'd known all along they were perfect for each other. The children buzzed with excitement, particularly when Mercy announced that after the wedding, she would continue teaching but live at the Xavier Ranch. Not everyone was pleased. Mrs. Parker sniffed that it was indecently hasty, while others whispered about Preston's past. But the majority seemed genuinely happy for them, especially once Reverend Miller publicly gave his blessing to the match. The wedding was set for the following Saturday, just 5 days away. In the meantime, Preston's telegram to Denver was sent, and Mercy had a difficult but honest conversation with Sheriff Williams. "So this Henderson fella is claiming theft because you have a picture of your own daughter," the sheriff clarified, scratching his head. "The locket was a gift," Mercy explained. "The photograph inside is all I have of her." Sheriff Williams considered this. "Seems to me the real theft was him taking your child." He stood, decision made. "I'll wire back that I've investigated and found no evidence of any Catherine Jameson in Red Cloud. That should buy you some time." "Thank you," Mercy said gratefully. "Don't thank me yet," he warned. "Men like Henderson don't give up easily. You and Xavier should watch your backs." The sheriff's words proved prophetic. 2 days before the wedding, a telegram arrived for Preston from his detective friend. Henderson left Chicago stop, traveling west stop, believed heading for Nebraska Territory stop, bringing associates stop, be careful stop. "He's coming himself," Mercy whispered, fear clutching at her heart. Preston's jaw tightened. "Good, saves us the trouble of going to him." "Preston, he's dangerous." "So am I," he reminded her, his eyes hard. "I've faced worse than a railroad man with delusions of grandeur." The day before the wedding, Preston insisted Mercy move to the ranch early, concerned for her safety in town. Mrs. Rodriguez prepared the spare bedroom, while Preston doubled his vigilance, checking and rechecking his rifles. That evening they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Despite the looming threat, there was a peacefulness to the moment that Mercy treasured. "Tomorrow you'll be Mrs. Xavier," Preston said, his arm around her shoulders. "Mercy Xavier," she tried the name out. "It sounds right." He kissed her temple. "It is right. Whatever happens with Henderson, we'll face it together." "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Not of marrying you," she quickly added, "but of what might happen after." "Don't be," Preston said confidently. "I won't let him hurt you again." That night, Mercy slept fitfully, dreams of Grace mingling with nightmares of Henderson. She woke before dawn, a strange calm settling over her. Whatever happened, today she would marry the man she loved. Mrs. Rodriguez helped her dress in a cream-colored gown that Preston had somehow procured from Denver. Her hair was adorned with wildflowers, and around her neck she wore the locket containing Grace's picture. "You look beautiful, Senora," Mrs. Rodriguez declared. "Like an angel." Preston was waiting for her at the bottom of the stairs, his expression transforming from nervous anticipation to awe as she descended. "Mercy," he breathed, "you're magnificent." They rode to town together in the wagon, Mrs. Rodriguez chaperoning until they reached the church where Reverend Miller waited. The building was filled with well-wishers, Mercy's students, the boarding house residents, even Sheriff Williams and his deputy. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When Preston placed the gold ring on her finger and promised to love and protect her all the days of his life, Mercy felt a happiness she'd thought forever beyond her reach. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Miller declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." The celebration afterward spilled into the churchyard, with food and music and laughter. For a few precious hours, Mercy allowed herself to forget the danger that approached, focusing instead on the joy of the moment. It was late afternoon when Sheriff Williams approached them, his expression grave. "Sorry to interrupt," he said quietly, "but thought you should know train from Omaha arrived an hour ago. 3 men got off asking about the schoolteacher." Preston's arm tightened around Mercy's waist. "Henderson." "Matches the description you gave," the sheriff confirmed. "Fancy suit, walking stick, 2 rough-looking fellows with him. They're at the hotel now." "Did you tell them about me?" Mercy asked. "Told them I'd look into it," Sheriff Williams said. "Bought you a little time, but not much." Preston nodded. "Thank you, Sheriff. We appreciate the warning." As the lawman walked away, Preston turned to Mercy. "We should get back to the ranch. I don't want to face them here. Too many innocent people who could get hurt." They said hasty goodbyes, explaining a family emergency at the ranch. As they were about to board the wagon, Emily Parker ran up, thrusting a small package into Mercy's hands. "A wedding present, Miss Jameson, I mean, Mrs. Xavier," the girl said breathlessly. "Ma doesn't know I made it." Mercy opened the package to find a delicately embroidered handkerchief with MX stitched in one corner. "It's beautiful, Emily. Thank you." The girl beamed before running back to her friends. As they drove away, Mercy held the handkerchief tightly. "Emily Parker has a good heart, despite her mother," she observed. Preston smiled. "People can surprise you. Sometimes even in good ways." Back at the ranch, Preston immediately began preparing for Henderson's inevitable arrival. He checked his rifles, secured doors and windows, and instructed Mrs. Rodriguez to go stay with her daughter in town. "You should go with her," he told Mercy. "It'll be safer." "I'm your wife now," she replied firmly. "My place is with you." Night fell, bringing with it a tense stillness. They sat at the kitchen table, a lantern burning low between them, pistols within reach. "I'm sorry," Mercy said suddenly. "This isn't how our wedding night should be." Preston reached across the table, taking her hand. "We'll have a lifetime of nights together after this is over." "You sound very certain." "I am." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I didn't find you just to lose you now." The sound of approaching horses broke the silence. Preston stood, checking his pistol one last time. "Stay inside," he instructed, moving to the window. "It's them 3 riders." Mercy's heart pounded as Preston stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. Through the window, she watched as 3 men dismounted. Even in the dim light, she recognized Charles Henderson, older, heavier, but unmistakable with his silver-tipped walking stick and air of authority. "That's far enough," Preston called out. "State your business." Henderson stepped forward, his companions hanging back. "I'm looking for Catherine Jameson. I have reason to believe she's in this area." "No one by that name here," Preston replied evenly. "Just me and my wife." "Your wife?" Henderson's voice carried a note of surprise. "And who might that be?" "Mercy Xavier," Preston said, emphasizing her married name. "Schoolteacher in Red Cloud, my bride as of this morning." Henderson was silent for a moment. "I'd like to speak with her." "That's not going to happen," Preston said coldly. "Whatever business you think you have, you can discuss it with me." One of Henderson's companions shifted, his hand moving toward his gun. Preston's rifle came up instantly. "I wouldn't," he warned. "I was shooting men before you learned to shave, boy." Henderson raised a hand, stopping his man. "There's no need for violence. I simply want what's mine." "Nothing here belongs to you," Preston replied. "Now I suggest you get back on your horses and ride out while you still can." Henderson's laugh was cold. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I could buy and sell this entire territory." "Money doesn't impress me," Preston said, "and it won't stop a bullet." The standoff continued, tension thick in the air. Mercy couldn't bear it any longer. Against Preston's wishes, she stepped onto the porch, standing tall beside her husband. Henderson's eyes widened. "Catherine." "My name is Mercy now," she said steadily. "And as my husband told you, there's nothing here that belongs to you." "The locket," Henderson insisted. "It was my mother's. You stole it when you fled." "You gave it to me," Mercy countered, "the day Grace was born. Said I should have something to remember her by, since you were taking her from me." The two men with Henderson exchanged uncomfortable glances. "That's a lie," Henderson sputtered, though doubt crept into his voice. "You were my sister's governess." "You became obsessed with her child. She's my daughter," Mercy interrupted, her voice ringing clear in the night air. "Mine and yours, and we both know it." Henderson's face contorted with rage. "You have no proof." "Don't we?" Preston stepped forward. "My friend in Denver has been quite thorough. Found the midwife who delivered Grace, the doctor who treated Mercy afterward. Even found records of payments you made to keep them quiet." Mercy stared at Preston in surprise. He hadn't told her this. "Telegram came while you were getting dressed," he explained softly, before turning back to Henderson. "We have enough evidence to ruin you, Henderson. Railroad companies don't look kindly on scandal, do they?" Henderson's composure cracked. "What do you want?" "Money." "I can pay. We don't want your money," Mercy said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I want my daughter." "Impossible," Henderson snapped. "She's being raised as my niece. It would create a scandal, then create a new story," Preston suggested coldly. "Say your sister never died. Say she's been found alive. I don't care how you do it, but Grace comes to her mother." "Or what?" Henderson challenged, though his bravado was failing. "Or every newspaper from here to Chicago gets the full story," Preston promised. "Every sordid detail. How you seduced your young employee, got her with child, then threatened and blackmailed her to keep it quiet." One of Henderson's men shifted uneasily. "Mr. Henderson, maybe we should—" "Shut up," Henderson hissed. He glared at Mercy and Preston, calculating. "Even if I wanted to, I couldn't just bring her here. She's 5 years old. She knows me as her uncle. She doesn't know you exist." "Then we'll come to Chicago," Mercy said, the plan forming as she spoke. "We'll be introduced properly. She can get to know us before any decisions are made." "And in the meantime, those documents stay sealed," Preston added. "As long as you cooperate." Henderson's jaw worked as he considered his options. Finally, he nodded curtly. 1 month. Come to Chicago in 1 month. I'll prepare her." He straightened his jacket. "But the locket stays with you." It was indeed a gift. Relief flooded through Mercy. 1 month, she agreed. Henderson turned to go, then paused. "She looks like you," he said grudgingly. "Same eyes." Without waiting for a response, he mounted his horse and rode away, his men following. As the sound of hoofbeats faded into the night, Mercy's knees gave way. Preston caught her, holding her close as tears of relief and hope streamed down her face. "Did your friend really find all that evidence?" she asked when she could speak again. Preston's lips quirked in a half-smile. Some. Enough to make it believable. The rest was a bluff. Mercy laughed through her tears. A bluff that worked. Henderson's type always folds when pushed, Preston said, guiding her back inside. They count on people being too afraid to challenge them. In the kitchen, he poured them each a small glass of whiskey. To our future, he toasted. All three of us. Mercy raised her glass. To family. Later, in the quiet of their bedroom, Mercy lay in Preston's arms, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "Are you really willing to go to Chicago?" she asked. "To help me bring Grace home." "I'd go to the ends of the earth for you," he replied simply. "And I meant what I said about family. Grace is your daughter, which makes her mine too now." Mercy raised herself on one elbow to look at him. "I love you, Preston Xavier." His eyes darkened as he pulled her closer. "Show me," he whispered. Their first night as husband and wife was everything Mercy had dreamed of and more. In Preston's tender embrace, the last shadows of her past finally began to fade, replaced by hope for their future. 1 month later, Mercy stood nervously in the parlor of Charles Henderson's Chicago mansion, Preston a steady presence beside her. The room was oppressively formal, with heavy velvet drapes and ornate furniture that spoke of wealth rather than comfort. Henderson entered first, his expression guarded. "She's ready," he said stiffly. "I've told her that her mother has been found after being lost for many years. She's confused but curious." Mercy's heart raced. "Thank you for doing this." Henderson's mouth tightened. "I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for her." Something like regret flickered across his face. "Despite what you may think, I do care for the child." Before Mercy could respond, the door opened again. A maid led in a small girl with chestnut hair and serious eyes. Mercy's eyes. "Grace," Henderson said gently, "this is the lady I told you about. This is your mother." The child regarded Mercy with solemn curiosity. "My mother was lost." Mercy knelt to the child's level. "Yes, sweetheart, I was lost, but I never stopped looking for you, not for one day." Grace tilted her head, studying Mercy's face. "You have eyes like mine." "Yes," Mercy whispered, fighting tears, "because you're my daughter." "And who is he?" Grace asked, pointing to Preston. Preston knelt beside Mercy. "I'm Preston. I married your mother, which means I'd like to be your father if that's all right with you." Grace considered this. "Do you have horses?" "Uncle Charles said you live on a ranch." Preston smiled. "I do. Including a colt who's just learning to run. He needs someone to help train him." Interest sparked in the child's eyes. "I could do that. Uncle Charles doesn't let me near the carriage horses." "There's a whole world waiting for you in Nebraska," Mercy said softly. "Wide open spaces, a creek to splash in, children to play with." "Would I have my own room?" Grace asked practically. "The biggest one in the house," Preston promised, "with a window that looks out over the valley." Grace turned to Henderson. "Would you visit me, Uncle Charles?" Surprise flickered across the man's face. If you wanted me to, I would," she decided. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she stepped forward and took Mercy's hand. "Can we go see the horses soon?" Tears spilled down Mercy's cheeks as she squeezed her daughter's small hand. "Yes, my darling. Very soon." The arrangements were complex, but progressed more smoothly than anyone had anticipated. Henderson, perhaps motivated by genuine affection for Grace or by fear of scandal, cooperated fully. Legal documents were drawn up acknowledging Mercy as Grace's mother and granting her custody. To explain Grace's sudden departure to Chicago society, Henderson crafted a story about his long-lost sister, now revealed to be alive, and married to a prosperous rancher out west, reclaiming her daughter. Few questioned it. The wealthy were entitled to their eccentricities. For 2 weeks, Mercy visited Grace daily, building a relationship with her daughter, one story, one shared meal, one tentative hug at a time. Preston joined them often, his natural ease with children quickly winning Grace's trust. By the time they boarded the train west, Grace was calling Mercy mother and holding Preston's hand without hesitation. Henderson came to the station to see them off, his usual arrogance subdued. "Take care of her," he said gruffly, pressing a small package into Mercy's hands. "Her education fund." "Use it well." "We will," Mercy promised. "And Charles, thank you." He nodded once, then bent to Grace's level. "Be good for your mother, little one. Remember what I taught you about sitting straight and speaking clearly." "Yes, Uncle Charles." Grace hugged him impulsively. "Will you really come visit?" "Next spring," he promised, his voice rough with emotion. "I want to see this famous colt of yours." As the train pulled away from the station, Mercy watched Chicago disappear, marveling at how life could change so completely. Beside her, Grace pressed her face to the window, exclaiming over every new sight. Preston's arm rested comfortably around Mercy's shoulders. "Happy?" he asked softly. She leaned into him, watching their daughter's excitement. "Beyond words." The journey home was long but filled with joy as Grace absorbed everything with wide-eyed wonder. By the time they reached Nebraska Territory, she was full of questions about the ranch, the school, and the town she would now call home. When they finally crested the ridge overlooking the Xavier Ranch, Preston stopped the wagon. "There it is, Grace, your new home." The little girl stared in amazement at the vista spread before her: the white farmhouse, the red barn, the cattle grazing in green pastures, and the distant mountains painted gold by the setting sun. "It's like a picture book," she breathed. "It's real," Mercy told her, her own heart full to bursting. "And it's ours." Mrs. Rodriguez had prepared a welcome feast, the table groaning with dishes that made Grace's eyes widen. After dinner, Preston showed her to her room, where a handmade quilt adorned the bed and wildflowers filled a jar on the windowsill. "Is it really all for me?" Grace asked, touching the quilt reverently. "All for you," Preston confirmed, "though you might have to share with the cat eventually. He tends to go where he pleases." Later, after Grace had been tucked in with promises of meeting the horses first thing in the morning, Mercy and Preston stood on the porch, arms around each other. "I keep thinking I'll wake up," Mercy confessed. "That all of this Grace, this place will disappear like a dream." Preston kissed her gently. "Not a dream, just a new chapter." "The best one," she agreed, leaning against him as stars appeared in the darkening sky. The weeks that followed were a time of adjustment and discovery as Grace settled into ranch life. She took to it naturally, learning to gather eggs from the chickens, helping Mrs. Rodriguez in the kitchen, and developing a special bond with the colt Preston had promised her. When fall arrived, bringing with it the start of the school year, Grace joined Mercy's class, proud to tell anyone who would listen that the teacher was her mother. The children accepted her easily, and soon she had friends who came to play at the ranch on weekends. Preston proved to be a patient, loving father, teaching Grace to ride, to fish in the creek, to identify the calls of different birds. At night, he read to her from books Mercy selected. The three of them cuddled together in the parlor as the fire crackled. One evening in late October, as the first snow dusted the distant mountains, Mercy found Preston at his desk, studying a letter. "From Charles," he explained, handing it to her. "Confirming his visit in the spring. Also asking if we'd consider sending Grace to a boarding school in Denver when she's older." Mercy frowned. "She belongs here with us." "I agree," Preston said quickly, "but it might not be a bad idea to consider options for her education eventually. Red Cloud Schoolhouse only goes so far." "We have years to decide that," Mercy said, setting the letter aside. "For now, I just want to enjoy having her home." Preston pulled her onto his lap. "Home," he repeated, has a nice sound to it." "It does," she agreed, resting her head against his shoulder. "Though I never expected mine would be in a place called Red Cloud, Nebraska Territory." "Life has a way of surprising you," Preston mused. "A year ago, I was a lonely ex-outlaw with too many regrets. Now I'm a husband and father." Mercy kissed him softly. "And I was a schoolteacher afraid of her own shadow. Now I'm Mrs. Xavier with nothing to fear." Preston's arms tightened around her. "Nothing at all," he promised. "Not anymore." Outside, the first snowflakes of winter began to fall, dusting the land that had once been Preston's solitary refuge, and was now home to a family bound by love rather than blood, a family that had found each other against all odds. In Red Cloud, people still talked about the schoolteacher and the rancher with the mysterious past. They talked about the child who arrived suddenly, with the teacher's eyes and a city child's manners. They speculated and wondered and gossiped, as small-town folks always do. But Mercy no longer cared what they said. Let them talk about how she'd risked everything for love. Let them talk about how Preston Xavier had found redemption in an unlikely place. Let them talk about the unlikely family at the ranch outside town. Let them talk about Mercy. For she had found her voice, her daughter, her love, and nothing anyone could say would ever take them away again.